The following program presents principles designed to promote good health and is not intended to take the place of personalized professional care. The opinions and ideas expressed are those of the speaker. Viewers are encouraged to draw their own conclusions about the information presented.
Character, personality, and behavior. These represent the expressions of what we are, the sum total of what we are. There are many things that influence the way that we express ourselves to the outside world. And some of these things have to do with the way we eat, the way that we dress, the way that we think, and the way that we organize our program. So we'd like to discuss some of these things on this program, and I think you'll enjoy it.
Welcome to Help Yourself to Health with Dr. Agatha Thrash of Uchee Pines Institute. And now, here's your host, Dr. Thrash.
I'd like to read a statement about character that I have found to be one of the most powerful ones. Let me read. Character is power, the silent witness of a true, unselfish, godly life carries an almost irresistible influence. By revealing in your own life the character of Christ, we cooperate with Him in the work of saving souls. It is only by revealing in our life His character that we can cooperate with Him. Now, understanding this in our lives may make us want to take a good close look at the way we project ourselves to the outside world, to those we live around, to those we work with, to those whose lives touch ours or in some way come into the same sphere as ours. Now, because of the fact that we grow up expressing our personalities in a certain way, this may make us feel that the kind of personality we've grown up with, this is what we're cemented with. This is the kind of thing that we should keep as long as we live. Actually, when we have a type of personality that we recognize for some reason is not the kind of personality we'd like to live with as long as we live, we may make some changes in it. And while our basic characters require a great deal of time, our personality expression requires a great deal of working on in order that we might change it. There are many things that we can do to make the personality change. Let's take, for example, the fact that you may have grown up feeling that the way that especially a woman should project her personality is as a light-hearted, perhaps even joyous, rather frivolous, maybe even flirtatious type of person, and that this represents the proper woman. Then, when you become a Christian, you begin to realize that some of these character and personality expressions are not the kind of personality and expression that you would like to project permanently. Therefore, you decide to make some changes. You'll find then that it takes quite a great deal of effort on your part to make a change in your personality. You may find that it takes years of training, years of decision making in order for you to make a change. To give you an example, I remember one time someone said to me after I became a Christian, someone who was very careful about all kinds of expression of the human voice, she said, "Agatha, I really don't like your swearing." And I said, "My swearing? I have never been a swearing person. What do you mean?" She says, "Well, you do use the word, 'my goodness.'" And I said, "Well, yes, I do. I do use that. Do you think that's swearing?" She said, "Well, goodness is one of the words used in the Bible about the character of God. And therefore, it may not be the very best thing to use that in a sort of slang way." So I got to thinking about this matter of my use of "my goodness." And I thought, she is right. It isn't the very best type of expression. And I'm sure that with a good grasp of language, I could find some kind of word or some kind of expression that would mean the same thing, that wouldn't even run the risk of having anything that might be even slightly profane. So I decided I would not use the term "my goodness" anymore. Well, you know the story. It was years before I finally completely got rid of ever saying the word "my goodness." I remember one time when I was getting pretty well into this matter of being aware that I didn't want to say "my goodness," that one day I started to say "my goodness," and I just said "my," and I stopped right there. Then for quite a while it was just "my," but I knew that the rest of it was supposed to follow. And so in my own mind, I had not accomplished really as much as I had wanted to. Now there are some objectives in life that I think it is well that we understand. Let me give you several things that are truly nice objectives in life. One is that we are designed not to bless ourselves nor to enjoy the good things that God has made, as wonderful as His created works are. We were not created to be hermits. We were created to be a blessing to mankind. So we could say that that is the first thing that represents an objective for a human being. Then the second thing, we were not created to glorify ourselves. While we may be very important, in fact, we are important enough that our great God of heaven sent His only Son to be our Redeemer. He also sent His Son to work in the matter of our creation. That's how important we are. While we were made of dust, we were also made of a very glorified type of dust. And therefore, God has made us in order that we might show forth His goodness. And in so doing, this can make us so that we can ourselves have a certain reflection of His glory. Now you might think, well, how can I bless humanity? What can I do? Well, there are many things that can help to bless mankind. One thing is the very facial expression that we have. If we express cheerfulness, if we look cheerful, if we look kindly, and as if we are having joy from life, then the chances are very good that we will begin to feel cheerful and joyous, even though the day may not be going as well as you would like it to go. Scientists have found that the very act of putting on a cheerful face can cheer up people who are depressed. Then a second thing is the use of kind words. Someone has called this the kingliness of kindness, and I believe that. Kindness reacts on oneself, it also reacts on other people. If we express hostility or anger or cynicism, these things react on ourselves. In fact, they may have 10 times a worse effect on ourselves than they have on the people that we work around. Then the next is adaptability. We cannot plan everything to the finest detail and expect that everything is going to go just in this way. If this were true, life might be a breeze. But we find that when we lay the very finest of plans, we may have spent months or even years deciding just how something should be carried out. And we make plans, we take steps that will go in a certain way. And yet there are accidents or there are natural providences that occur that make it so that those plans that we are carrying out cannot continue, or they continue only with great delay. We remember the way that the children of Israel tried to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. They had accidents. They lacked materials. People in the surrounding nations interfered with what they were doing, so that they had to work with a trowel in one hand and a weapon in the other. We may have this same kind of thing in our own lives, but if the kind of plan that we have is a plan that we know that God has given us, we should push forward in it. There may be many different ways to do the same kind of task, and so we should be adaptable in that way. If we know where our goal is, we are determined to get there, then we can maybe take more than one route to get to that goal. Adaptability can make it so that we understand a much more easy type of lifestyle. Now, there is another aspect of this matter of blessing mankind, and that is sharing what you own. We can look at it in this way, that we should own things only to bless mankind. Take a look at your possessions. Are those possessions things that are merely to bless you, that do not build you up in some way so that you have a better ability to bless others? Or in some way they work in such a way as to make others enjoy life more or have a better opportunity to know our Savior better? Then the fifth thing is to protect the rights of others. People do have rights, and while before God we have no rights, we have destroyed all our rights. We've given up these rights. We gave them up in the Garden of Eden when we decided to take another master instead of our Heavenly Father. But He has showered these privileges back on us so that although we can claim nothing, He has promised things and we can claim those promises. These are not basic rights of ours. These are because God is good and He wants us to be happy. But there are certain things that God has given us space, God has given us privacy, He has given us possessions, He has given us a reputation, and we should very carefully protect these rights of others. A sixth thing is that we should refuse to criticize others. Look for the good things in others. Do not be ready to look for those things where people have failed, or look for things where people are hurting others, or in some way they're falling short of the mark. If we allow others to criticize people in front of us, then it becomes more easy for us to criticize someone else. So we should not only not criticize someone ourselves, but we should not allow others to criticize people in front of ourselves. Now, as incongruous as it may seem, this next item is also a way that we bless other people, and that is to reprove or to correct people when they are in error. If you think about this in a way of simply keeping smooth waters all the time, then you will not be able to see the importance of reproof or correction when it is truly needed. But if you reprove the mistakes of others, this indicates that you have an interest in them, that you want to see them bettered, that you want to see their lives happy. And if you see a person in a mistake that you know will lead to unhappiness, you should do what you can to help them come away from that particular path. Another way that we can bless people is by patiently teaching the principles of health reform. Health reform means that we have the greater possibility of being happy. If we're healthy, we're more likely to be happy. And if you come to think of it, if we're healthy, we're better able to serve God. And so it makes us more and more able to bring our lives into a position of being a good soldier for the Lord. If a person is sick, then we should use the simple remedies. Simple remedies should be offered when anyone complains of a headache. If you have anything that you can offer, then offer that for a person. Or if they have a backache, or if they have a cold, whatever you may know a simple remedy for, help your fellow man with these simple remedies. And that's a way that you can bless mankind. Then the last thing is that you should remember that your first duty toward God and to man is that of self-development. Now, self-development means that you bring yourself in a position where you can be of service better. Therefore, we sleep in order that we might bless others. We eat in order that we might have good health so that we can be a blessing in God's kingdom. Now, a study that was done way back in 1985 and reported in Science News says that heavy doses of caffeine indicates that a person might get a panic disorder. Now, panic disorders, this is a true pathologic problem of the personality. A panic disorder is characterized by a sudden rise in blood pressure, a rise in pulse, the skin turgor and other changes on the skin are recognized as being a part of the panic disorder. And panic disorders have been found to be related to caffeine. Now, caffeine is found in a number of different foods. Coffee, tea, colas, and chocolate represent the way that in America we are most likely to encounter caffeine. So if you know anyone who has panic attacks, you might be able to help them with that bit of information. From the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, a study done on pharmacology, biochemistry, and behavior found this: caffeine and smoking reduced reaction times. Now, reaction time helps us to be able to drive a car properly, but it also helps us to be able to watch over our children, to keep the house in good order, to understand exactly the proper thing that we should say to someone else at the proper time. And therefore, if our reaction times are reduced, we should be very interested in what we can do to avoid having reaction times reduced. Let me read this about smoking and caffeine. Smoking increased the heart rate, according to these researchers. It increased the blood pressure, the finger vasoconstriction. That means that as they were testing vasoconstriction, that's the tightening of blood vessels, they found that their instruments would pick up in a little finger instrument a constriction of blood vessels in the finger. We know about caffeine that it dilates blood vessels on the nose and it constricts blood vessels in the stomach and in the heart. And so smoking and caffeine are not good actors in this way. Respiratory frequency was also reduced in the smokers. And with electroencephalograms that they did, they found an increase in alpha frequency. Now, the alpha wave is a wave that represents sort of being spaced out. And they found a decrease in beta waves. Beta waves are those waves that we draw in the electroencephalogram when the mind is at its peak. We are paying close attention. We're being critical of what is going on around us to see if it agrees with our religion and if we like it, if it is moral or immoral or whatever. And the beta waves are those that the brain writes when it's at its peak activity. They also found that not only were respirations reduced in frequency, the amplitude of respirations was also decreased. That would indicate that the brain would get less oxygen than it otherwise could. Caffeine increased blood pressure, and it also increased vasoconstriction in the finger. And the frontal lobe activity was reduced in the brain. That was both the beta power as well as some other powers of the electroencephalogram. Now, you can see that these changes are representative of a poisoning of our system. These are not beneficial things that occur. in our lives, but they are things that are poisoning from things that we take in our food. Now, failures in our lives can fall in a number of categories. I would like to discuss some of these categories. One of those categories is a category of physical failure. We make a failure in life because of physical failure. Caffeine, smoking, alcohol, junk foods, failure to exercise, all of these kinds of things can make us have a physical failure in the life. We can also have a failure in the life because of weakness of the will. Failure to decide that we want to take a certain course that would lead to success. We may have a failure of the will because of shyness. We fear other people, or we fear failure, or we fear becoming involved because it might require of us more than we think we're willing to put forth. We may not set plans and goals. These all represent a failure of the will. Then we may have a failure because of inattention. Now, inattention can be of a number of kinds. It can be an inattention to details, the details of getting everything in order, making certain that we watch over things in a way to keep everything going forward. We may need to turn from 1,000 very good things in order that we can keep the attention focused just on that very thing that represents our duty at that time. We can look at our lives and see how many failures we had in school as a youngster. Were these failures because we were placed in the grade too early, or simply because we were inattentive? We wanted to play when we should have been doing homework. These things represent indicators to us that can tell us whether or not we are prone to failure because of inattention. Now, another way that we can fail is because in old age we have not prepared and preserved our powers so that we are able to carry forward in a program that we may have set and we may have begun in a good way, but because the conclusion of it is we're not able to carry it out because of ill health. This may be a problem for us too. And no matter what age we are in life, we can improve the status of our health by improving the quality of our lifestyle, by making things on a regular schedule, by being careful to get plenty of sleep, by eating an appropriate diet. Now, some researchers did some study on some things that would neutralize stress in the body and in the mind. And what do you suppose was that most important thing that they found? Well, of course, prayer is one of those most important things. Some other researchers found that exercise would neutralize stress. Let me read this presented in the German medical literature. It says, when continuous endurance is required in sports or work, the peripheral neuromuscular and the central nervous systems will end up in a state of tiredness. Now, that simply means that if you persist in work, you'll get tired. The sport physiotherapy enhances the peripheral regeneration and prevents the somatic sequelae of chronic physical stress. Again, what that means is if you exercise, that will keep you from being physically stressed, chronically physically stressed. The way that that works is that by exercising, you strengthen muscles, and a strong muscle is less likely to get tired than a muscle that hasn't been exercised and that may be weak. Now let's go to another behavioral expression, and that is the expression of anxiety. Anxiety is a little different from stress. Stress simply means that we are under tension. We are feeling a burden on us. But anxiety is that thing of actually being fearful, chronically fearful, just not feeling at ease with life. Some researchers found that exercise offers therapeutic benefits for reducing anxiety without the dangers or costs of drug therapy or psychotherapy. Well, that's important news. We can know how we can reduce the stresses on the mind and the anxieties on the mind by simply doing exercise. And of course, exercise has 1,000 other benefits as well. But we may wonder how exercise neutralizes anxiety. Well, some researchers attacked that problem, and I'm glad they did. They gave us some information that I find to be very interesting. They found this. This was some work done at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, and they found this. Acute bouts of aerobic exercise have been consistently associated with significant reductions in anxiety, but explanations for this effect remain elusive. Well, they began to set up a type of research that would indicate why. So they did an electroencephalogram, an EEG, and they found that activation after exercise was greater in the left frontal lobe than in the right frontal lobe. Now that indicated to the researchers that those things having to do with stress and tension, which are stored in the mind, were lessened, and those things having to do with relaxation and enjoyment were strengthened after exercise. So we can see how it is that exercise neutralizes stress. Now, with these very important things that we can see in the use of very simple things like foods or the avoidance of foods, we can see that there are many things that can help us to know just how the personality and the character can be influenced by things such as the way we eat, the way we drink, the kind of medicines that we take or do not take, and the way that we organize the lifestyle. Everything in life that we do has its importance. There are many things that are of minor importance for us, but they still have some importance. And there are many things that have major importance for the person. We need to study those things and arrange the life accordingly.